Here we go. Here we go. Hello. Howdy. Hello. Okay.
We're still lagging.
Look at that. It's like a mega delay. There it goes.
Ah, there it goes.
Okay. Yep. That's yours, not mine. It's like a mega delay. And Jasmine, howdy. Oops. Howdy, Jasmine. Howdy, Penelope. Howdy, Landon. Howdy, Ashley. All right. Howdy, Lynn. Howdy, JJ. Today we are going to be talking with Dee, who got to experience her very first ever Feast of Tabernacles, the coat. So,
actually, my very first camping trip ever.
Is it really?
Yes.
Wow.
Yeah.
So you were like totally not sure what to expect, right?
I was like totally in culture shock.
So let me ask you. Okay, let's start off all this.
Okay.
So you've never, ever camped before?
I'd never owned a tent, nothing. I
Okay.
had nothing.
And
No experience.
you get this crazy idea that you're going to go camp. And what put that into your head?
Well, part of it is obedience. It's what the Father tells us to go do, is to go spend time out in the wilderness, camping under tents, and just basically, I guess, has to be His Spirit put that in us to go follow that directive. That's part of the feasts. So.
Now, is this something you had looked forward to? You hadn't practiced it before, obviously.
No.
No? And,
I was, yeah.
Let's see. Prior to this, though, what sort of preparation did you put into it? I mean, what really moved you? I mean, we see other people doing it. Was that part of the impetus to push you to do this? And like maybe part of a prepper streak, or were you ready to go all Rambo and live in the woods, or what happened?
Oh, I thought I was.
What was the lead up to it?
Well, actually, I've said in a couple of different places. I've been in a narrow path walk for about 2 years. It'll be 2 years in January. And so I was actually planning to go to SoCo last year. I was going to go to NYSTV, their SoCo, but my mom had gotten sick last July, and I ended up losing all of my vacation time and everything, so I didn't get to go. So yeah, the last couple of years I've sort of kind of been in a prepper streak. I've got a bug out bag, and I have a pup tent, and I've got a couple of friends trying to tell me, oh, you need this, and I'm like, well, yeah, eventually, and then I won't be able to carry my bag at all because I know I need all this stuff. So I had already started gathering supplies. I had a lot of different things. So I had a small pup tent, and I was like, this is going to be way too small. I had already gone and bought a camping stove and some other things that I felt like I was going to need just by doing some research. And I had bought another tent, and then I got laid off, so I took some things back that I probably shouldn't have had, knowing later I shouldn't have had.
And was the tent one of them?
The tent was fun.
Okay.
But there's an explanation to that tent when we get into it.
Okay.
It actually worked out for the better. So I actually went up there with a pup tent.
Okay. Now someone's asking, Lynn's asking, were you bringing your dog? Were you planning on bringing your dog, Velcro?
Yep. Yep,
Yeah.
we went. He went with me. I see Michelle's question. I'm from Central Arkansas. My hometown is in North Arkansas, and so the SoCo was in Southwest Missouri, which is really close to where I'm from, where I grew up. So yes, the part we went in, the people I went with or that organized it, they had it in a park that allowed RVs and tents. So yeah, Velcro went with me. He was a trooper. Not happy most days, but he was a trooper.
Right.
He was on a leash. He went with me everywhere we went and into the buildings, which was really good. The park allowed the dogs into the buildings everywhere except for the restaurant.
Now, when you say, okay, so this is, I missed that. What type of park again?
It is an RV park.
Okay.
It has RV slots, but it also has a really nice tree covered area where you can set up tents. And then they have power poles that they've got set up for boat charging, and they put adapters in there so if you could run the tent cords. So we had I had a 100-foot electric cord run to my tent.
Okay, interesting. So, okay, so let's backtrack. We're kind of getting into the actual bit of it. So when you got there, you've never set up a tent before.
I had set up the tent. I did a small practice run 2 years ago, 2 or 3 years ago. So I had set up the tent. I had that capability. I had done like a day camping. I didn't overnight sleep, but I did, go set the tent up, take some lunch stuff.
Okay.
Hang out at a park.
Okay, and so that was kind of your warm up.
That was my, yeah.
All right. And just out of curiosity, in your idea for preparation, what was it that you thought you needed to bring with you as far as food and like clothing supplies?
Well, let's just say what I thought I needed and what I needed were completely two different things. So I did bring, I had checked the weather enough to know that it was going to be cooler. That area is about 10, 15 degrees cooler than where I'm at, Central Arkansas. So I knew to prep for that. And I had been watching the weather, so I knew to bring some sweaters and socks and, like leggings and jeans and things like that. So I did, at least clothing-wise, did pretty well. Bringing warmer clothes. The camping supplies, I believed I needed a prep table. The butane, I bought a little butane camping stove with some extra butane and some, it's like a little kit that's a frying pan and a pan and a cup. It's like $5. It's about this big around and it encloses, so it's actually made for a backpack. So I had brought that. My food, I've got, supply stuck back that if the weather goes, if the weather turns bad and we get snow in Central Arkansas, which shuts down everything because we don't have the equipment for it, I've got food and water here that I can go a couple of weeks, 2 or 3 weeks with. So that's actually what I took with me to camp, to the SoCo.
Okay, so very interesting. Now you get there, you get all set up, and you see what everybody else has, and is it similar to what you have, or are you packing way too much stuff, or are you way underprepared?
I'm way underprepared. Yeah, okay. These people are serious. Yeah, the people that were around me had all been doing SoCo for years. They'd been campers for years, and yeah, I was seriously underprepared. these people could have lived in their tents the way they had it set up. It was amazing. And some of them did what they call glamping, where they had lights and, chairs and all set around, and they had extra tarps covering their tent, and then their prep areas. They sort of kind of like had outdoor kitchens. Like if you've ever been familiar with chuck wagons and stuff, they basically had an outdoor setup for everything. So.
In that, so you say glamping, that was there anybody there that was not electric?
Pretty much everybody there was electric.
Oh, really? Okay.
In fact, I was about the only one. When I set my setting up, I didn't get my extension cord out because I realized I didn't have anything. I didn't bring anything that was electric. I didn't have anything. So everybody else, they were all pretty much running on extension cords.
Interesting. I am more like-minded with the way you went, rather than the let's take all the electric appliances out.
Yeah. Well, actually, most of them cooked and everything with just camping stoves. They didn't really have a lot of electric, but they did power heaters, and their lights. A lot of them had the outdoor string lights that they had. Some of them had around their thing. So it wasn't like they were just all electric, but they did have shore power, what the RVers call is shore power. And we had about 6 or 7 people that had either pool campers, pool trailers, or full RVs that came in as well.
So houses.
Yeah, so houses on wheels.
Right. Now, let's see. Now, I think you had said something about once SoCo really got going, you were not as warm as you had expected to be?
I knew it was going to be cool.
Uh-huh.
But I had forgotten. I have been away from home for a long time, and it is very humid up there. So you get humidity and cold, and it feels like it's bone chilling cold. And it wasn't all that cold, but the campground that we were in sat down in a little hole, and it was covered by trees. So it didn't warm up during the day, and there was a creek that ran right beside it, which was great. I mean, it was a great area, great campground. The people there were wonderful, very well kept. But the ground was wet, and the tents were right by the creek, and it just never warmed up during the day. So it was much colder than 40-something degrees. It felt more like in the 30s.
That I see some people talking about how bugs are attracted to them. I just have to say, eat more garlic. Yeah,
it was interesting when my former husband, we'd go out, we'd sit outside, and not a mosquito one would light on him, and I would just get eaten alive. So somebody says it's blood type.
Interesting. I think it's garlic. All right. Anyway.
That's a good idea. Eat more garlic.
Yeah, Desmond agrees with me. Mucho ajo. All right. So when it got to be colder, what did you do about that? When you found yourself colder than you expected to be?
I did pretty well as far as bringing blankets and quilts and covers and things like that, which would have been fine. But then my tent was so small, I couldn't use the sleeping bag or the air mattress I had bought. So the first night, I managed till about 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning, and then it was just way colder than I can do. So I actually put Velcro in the car, and we sat in the car the rest of the night with the heater I fired up the car and warmed it up really well, and then we slept in the front seat of the car the rest of the night. And so after that, I knew it was going to get even colder. I knew we weren't going to be able to stay in the tent. So I unpacked the car and put all the bedding on one half of the car. And for 2 nights, we actually slept in the car.
So everything in one half of the car, meaning like if it was a twin size bed, you were sleeping on one side of it? Okay.
Yeah. So I just rearranged everything, restacked everything, moved things outside that I could move so that it gave me a bed space. And I'm in a Subaru Crosstrek.
Oh, okay.
So this is I don't think it's considered a subcompact, but it's a compact car.
It's a smaller car.
Yeah. In the back, I wasn't able to stretch out all the way.
And do you think that somebody who wasn't 6 feet would be able to do that?
Not very comfortably.
No.
They could if they scooted. Like I slept on the passenger side. If you move the passenger seat all the way forward and then like had a board or something that filled that space in. And I've seen that on some people, some YouTube videos where they've converted their small cars. They'll have a piece of wood or something that fills in that gap. Then you could probably stretch out all the way.
Okay. Landon says he lived in a Tahoe for about 4 months.
Yeah.
Was that, personally, I think it's harder to live out of a vehicle that's not made for living out of. We'll put it that way.
Yeah. Well, it is because it's not, you don't really have the room. And without the experience of knowing how to pack things, Velcro had gotten sick the night before. I needed to pack the car, so I ended up just having to throw stuff in the car to get on the road. So I didn't plan real well as far as, it'd been better to have tote bins to have things packed in so that they stacked on one another well. I ended up with just a very unorganized car. So, if you did that a lot, where it was planned on how to organize things, I would have had it better organized it within the car itself.
Right.
But
okay.
I didn't.
Interesting. So you decided to tough it out and stay?
That was a tough decision. Tuesday night, I know I was texting you and texting some people in a chat room. I was absolutely miserable. I was cold. I was wet. I don't make friends quickly. My personality is not one of those best people type that goes out and makes friends well. So when I make them, I have great friends, but it just takes me a long time. So by Tuesday, I still don't really know people. I'm cold. I'm wet. I could tell Velcro wasn't very comfortable. So I pretty much decided I was going to go home. He had a vet visit in about an hour away from where we were. So I was going to go rent a hotel room, one of these, they had little cabins scattered throughout the area, and I was just going to go rent them for a couple of nights, take him to the vet, and go home. And I was really praying about it. I knew the Father would forgive me for that, and pat me on the head and say it's okay. And I was determined I was not going to murmur. I will say I was in tears. I was miserable, but I was not going to murmur because I thought about the children in Israel. I was like, this is probably sort of kind of how they felt. What does it say in Scripture that they were mad at Moses? They said we could have been sitting around the meat pots. No. Even though they were in slavery, they could be sitting around in their nice houses around their, and have plenty to eat and be pseudo comfortable. And I was thinking, this is probably how they felt. They got thrust out of their area, out of their homes. They're out wandering around in the wilderness in tents. They're not comfortable. They don't have water. And as I was sitting at the second, I had checked on 2 different cabin areas to rent. I was sitting at the second one just praying, Father, what do I do? I want to be obedient. I want to do this. And it was just like this determination came over me of, no, this is part of it. This is part of obedience. This is part of learning what our what our spiritual ancestors did. This is part of the whole thing. So I got in the car, turned around. There was a small town close by that had a Walmart. And I went and got a bigger tent. I got a Mr. Buddy heater. I had a budget of what I wanted to spend. And I was within that budget. And that's what I did. And I just came back, and the people that were right next to me, if you looked at my camping site, they were to the right of me. They were fabulous. They had actually helped me set up some things. And so the youngest daughter saw me trying to set up this new tent that was much bigger than what I had. And so she came over, and like in 30 minutes, we had it set up, and I bought me a little small prep table, and it made it much, much better for a couple of days.
Nice. Much more comfortable.
Well, I had bought an air mattress, so I was able to get my air mattress back out. And what was really interesting on that, I bought it at Kroger at the end of the season. I went in on Tuesday. They were marked down to 25%. I went back in on Thursday. They had marked them down to 75%. So I had got a twin size air mattress and an inflator that I didn't realize was battery operated when I bought it. So there's a story behind those 2 things too. That was pretty awesome. So yeah, we were much, much more comfortable. I still only had, I did get my electrical cord out and run it into the tent. The tent had one of those little electric cord outlets, but it really was meant to, all I used it for was really to charge my cell phone, which I didn't have cell phone service either.
Oh, that's so good.
Yeah. Well, no, actually that was good. It was, somebody asked me in the chat what I did for warmth. Jasmine and I bought a Mr. Buddy propane heater. It's about this size, and it just takes one of those single use propane bottles that twists on. And it heated up my tent very, very well. And I set it up on some wood blocks so that it wouldn't sit right down on my tent floor. Stayed really, really nice and toasty. Yeah, it only has 5 hours on low, so you have to get up in the middle of the night and
change
the bottles. Yeah. But really, what I would do is I'd warm up the tent and then turn it off and sleep until I got cold, which was generally 3 or 4 o'clock in the morning. And then I'd get up and turn it back on. So.
Okay. I'm looking this up. I'll post a link to
that tally.
So what did you get, little buddy?
What did I what?
What heater? The portable buddy?
Yeah, the bigger. Well, not the biggest one. They have one that screws right on top of the propane cylinder, but this one was a box. It was a square. And then they have one that's even bigger than that, but that's the one I bought.
That's what I'm looking at. Okay, I'm going to post the link for everybody.
Yeah.
Very cool. So that got you settled in, kept you warm. Able to sleep in the tent, yeah.
Able to sleep, and we were warm. Velcro just crawled right under the cover, and he was a happy camper. And you have to buy like something like a yoga mat to go between you and the air mattress, because the air mattress picks up the cool from the ground, and so they can be really cold. So you put that. It wasn't a yoga mat; it was actually like a workout mat, and you put that down before you put your. And don't ask me where I found that information at. Oh, it was on the information that we had been sent about glamping.
Interesting. So, aside from all that, aside from your preparations and your immediate experience, what was it? What was your experience? Because you said you have a hard time socially, initially with people. So here you are with what, 10 strangers?
10?
100?
No, it was over 100, because
Over
by the
100
time
strangers. Okay.
Yeah. No.
And what's your impression of these people? I mean, you first get there, you're alone, you have your dog Velcro, and then there's all these people. Does it look like they all know each other, or is there other newbies, or what's going on there?
For the most part, a lot of them know each other already. A lot of them, there were very few of us that I was aware of or became aware of that were new to SoCo, and a lot of them knew each other. They'd either been at SoCo together or just in other venues where they knew each other. So they were wonderful people, and I'm going to say some great. They did their parenting doesn't compare to what the world's parenting is. They had some really great kids. The teenagers were well behaved, and the kids overall, they all played well together. So
respectful.
Very respectable. They would, like if somebody needs some help, they would just get up, and like one lady was packing some things that she'd set up on the massage table, and some 10-year-old boys were there, and they were like, "Here, let me help you." They weren't asked. Their parents didn't come ask them. Nothing. They just did it. Those parents have done a really wonderful job with the kids.
Excellent. Yeah. What about the adults?
Everybody, to throw that many people together with that many different type of personalities, it was amazing. Everybody was friendly. They were warm. They were very loving, very caring. Like I said, the people that were right next to me, I didn't ask for help because that isn't what I do. I'm very independent, which is good and bad. I didn't want to be a bother to anybody, so I didn't ask. They just came over, "Do you need help?" and started helping me. It wasn't, and then, sort of kind of invited me over and let me sit with them and visit. And, but yeah, everybody, we'd have many comments like that on our group gatherings of how I've been in, I guess it's a differentiation. I've been in chat rooms with, fellow believers and Torah followers, and sometimes there's a lot of contention and I'm right, you're wrong. There was none of that. It was everybody respected everybody else, respected where they were in their beliefs, and so from that perspective, I hope to SoCo with these people again. Is what I hope.
There wasn't you didn't see anybody that was coming up to you and saying you're dressed wrong or you're eating wrong or why aren't you practicing this or that? It was just all pure fellowship.
It was all fellowship. There was no pointing fingers at anybody. And there was, somebody asked me how many get-togethers a day. It just depended. Sabbath, it really depended on the day. Pretty much every morning, except for 2 days, we had Bible study. And then a couple of days during the week, we would have a shared meal, or we'd get together for something else during the night, during the day. But then the kids, they had activities set up really well for the kids. And that was something that was mentioned that would be helpful in the future, is if they would set up like times for the men to get together and time for the women to get together, so that you're getting to know one another instead of people being with their families. Because if you're with your families and friends, you have a tendency to stay within that group, and that's just human nature. That's not a complaint or a
right. Stick to ourselves.
We do.
No.
Yeah. And so if we've had more, let's get together women as a Bible study, or just to get together and chit chat, that I think would have been really helpful for me. But other women made the same comment, so it wasn't just me that had mentioned that. So, but yeah, it was great people. Nobody walked up to me and said, "Why aren't you in a dress?" or "Why aren't you in a skirt?" or "Why aren't you wearing a head covering?" or, But they did tend to eat really clean. I would say the only thing is maybe a few things they didn't pay attention to, and maybe, for the fun and for the celebration, they might have brought their Twinkies with them or something like that. But,
right.
For the most part, everybody stayed within, the food guidelines that we have.
Okay. And then was that, I had seen on another group's Feast of Tabernacles videos, they were, it looked like everybody there would basically just set out all their food. And if anybody looked like they were wandering by, they would be like, "Come here and try this. You come over here and try this." Was there any of that going on, or?
There wasn't. And, now that you get to thinking about, now that you said that, maybe what would be an idea would be, if you look at how the children of Israel were set up around the tabernacle.
Uh-huh.
They were set up in groups by their tribe. They were set up in blocks facing. And so I think that this was sort of kind of spread out, and people did have things sort of kind of more set up to themselves, which I do that. I did that too. But yeah, that might be something interesting to suggest for future, is maybe set up in small little blocks of community, I guess. But no, there wasn't any of that.
Interesting.
I think they did that with the shared meal a couple of different nights, where they made stuff in crock pots or big containers, and then you brought that, and then everybody went through the line and ate.
That sounds fun too.
Yeah, it was. There was some really good stuff.
Right.
I'm not much on standing in line, so I tended to wait until the line went away, or dwindled down to, and so there wasn't a lot of food left when you got there, but you could still scrape together some decent stuff.
Right. You get all the good pot scrapings.
That's right. And some of that stuff is better, like when you make lasagna and it's stuck to the bottom.
Right. Now, so then it comes towards the end of Sukkot, and then how did that wrap up? When you came to the end of it for you, I mean, it was like I say, your first experience. What were your perceptions of that, of like everybody packing up and everything?
Well, I do need to tell a story that sort of kind of helps go along with the tent story and how people helped. It was, we were in our Sunday morning group, and the campground security and people came through and said, we've got a storm coming in, and it's bad, and a lot of rain, a lot of hail, high winds. And so some people actually decided to go home. And my position was, this is what I decided to do. I don't have the option to go home. And so I went back into Walmart and got a huge tarp. It was 16 by 20. It was bigger than I could handle. And the people next to me, there's several military guys, former military, that were there. The camp organizer sent those guys over to me, and we got the tarp set up. And it started, and what was interesting is the guys all got together and said, look, this is what we're going to do. We are going to pray about this. We're going to ask the Father to split the storm, let it go around us. And we did that, and then we went outside. We had some guys there that blew the shofar. And actually, like at Jericho, we shouted at the storm. And I went back to my tent. It started pouring down rain. It was thunder, lightning. 2 o'clock in the morning, I heard some guys walking around, and I was like, what are these guys walking around outside for? It's raining. Get up the next morning and find out that my tent, I had actually woke up in the middle of the night and stood up, and it was like walking on a waterbed. Oh. And what I found out the night before, the water had come up probably at least that far on the side of my tent. And because I hadn't loaded my tent down, and because I was on a sleeping bag or an air mattress, it floated. It lifted up and floated like I was in an ark. Not one drop of water was in my tent. If it had, I'd been in trouble because my electrical cord was on the ground.
Right.
And that was absolutely, and the whole area we were in was sort of like in a little dip. So it was just flooded. And I just was in shock, because that was an absolute miracle. And we got back to the group meeting that afternoon, and they had some people that had watched the storm on radar, and it actually literally split and went around us where we were. All we got was rain. We didn't get any high winds. We didn't get any hail. And so that is just an awesome testament to our Father and his protection. Wow. When we do what he's asking us to do, that was absolutely just awe-inspiring for who he is and what he does. So
Amen.
It was amazing. It was absolutely wonderful. So anyway, I had help. I had 3 or 4 guys came over and helped set that tent up. And my impression on just the overall experience, first off, I got to thinking about it a little bit later. Part of it is just my personality and how I relate to people, and how I don't get out there easily. But secondly, and I'm going to base this too off of other Sukkots that I'm aware of that only want families. When the Israelites were in the wilderness, and when Abba calls us back out to the wilderness, there's going to be more than just families. There's going to be widows. There's going to be orphans. There are going to be single people there that don't. I'll probably, you got guys that are hunters and they're single. Well, they're probably a little bit more equipped. But you have somebody that's a first-time Sukkoter, or there are going to be people like that in your group. And I would say that probably, if you've been doing it for a long time, and this group obviously allowed singles, they allowed pets, just like you would if you'd walked out of Israel. That's what you would have had, or walked out of Egypt. Is think about maybe how you could help support those people. Maybe when you sign up, ask, is this your first SoCo? Are you traveling with a family? And if the answers to that are no, or yes, it's my first SoCo, or no, I'm not traveling with a family, I'm traveling alone, because they're singles more than just, literal singles. They're singles that don't have family support. Is maybe pair them with somebody that, because the organizer doesn't have the time to personally respond to every single person. So maybe set up opportunities where they have some extra people that are supporting, that you can compare that new SoCoder to somebody that's more seasoned. And they can email back and forth and say, okay, hey, when you get there, find us, come set up by us, let us help you get situated, so that you're not completely alone and you're not by yourself. So that you feel like you're more part of the family, more part of the group. And I saw some other single women that were there that I think were struggling as well. Trying to connect within a group of people that they really, really, didn't know. But that's just an observation of how to incorporate the different types of people that you have in your group.
Interesting. So, what plans are you making? How are you altering your plans for next year? We'll put it that way. What materials what supplies are you planning on taking? Just how much better prepared are you preparing to be?
Well, a lot of it is next time, and this was something that I saw on a video, is have everything in bins. Have everything already set aside. So like all your tent supplies, you have that in one thing. Your tents, your tarps, your ropes, anything that would go along with that. Have your food box together. Have you a tote box that's got your all your tools and utensils for cooking. So like you have your camping stove, your propane, all of your prep stuff. So that's the first thing, is over this next year getting that organized so that it's easy just to pick it up, put it in the car, and go. And to think through, okay, what did I not have that I needed? I think I pretty much bought what I needed this time. And so I think I've pretty much got everything. It's getting it organized so that it's easy just to pick it up, put it in the car, and go. The other thing is to look at, I actually borrowed an ice chest. For me, being in a small car, that ice chest actually was taking up a lot of space. And so, maybe looking at one of those, Yeti makes, it's really expensive, but they make a really nice bag cooler that lasts 3 or 4 days. The ice lasts 3 or 4 days in it, so maybe invest in something like that. So I'd say my next thing would be invest in a really, really good cooler. And then like a prep table. And so I think getting it all organized like that would make it a lot easier to organize. Once you get there, you know that's in that box. You can take the box out and get everything set up.
So you say, because you commented about your car size a couple of times.
Mm-hmm.
What if you upgrade to a larger vehicle? Would that alter? Yeah,
that would be huge. And I am actually looking at doing that. For one thing, I know that I've shared in chat that I made the mistake. I don't know if it was a mistake or just something out of necessity. I had to buy a car. I hadn't had a car payment in 10 years. So I need to get out from under that. And one of the things I'm looking at is an older Suburban, maybe like a, 2001, something like that, 4-wheel drive that makes that easier. There's actually people living out of their Suburbans. A Tahoe actually is a little bit too small because the Suburban, you can actually set up a twin bed in there and a 6-foot person can easily sleep in there. And they're setting those up as a camper that you can, boondock in one of those. So that is my goal. Either that or actually I wouldn't mind having that and maybe a small camper shell that everything's stored in the truck, but actually, sleep in the travel trailer. Although even though I've pulled horse trailers in my youth, I don't know the bad thing about those travel trailers that I have read about is you get them off balance. You have to balance them out. And that's something else I've learned. You have to balance out your weight on a travel trailer. And if you get those off balance and you get to going too fast, those can actually flip on you. So I have to be really careful. And Lynn, I've actually looked at an ambulance as well. Ambulances are really, really well kept. By law, they are required to service them every, I think, 3,000, 3,500 miles. They have all the electricity in them, everything. So you just have to put your pretty stuff in there, your water, and go. So I've actually looked at that.
Very nifty. So you know what you need next year.
Right.
What about that part that says spend it on whatever your heart desires, right? Mm-hmm. Just the best food, best drink. What is it that you would take with you next year that you really thought, what would be really good right now? What would that be next year?
Well, I will say that for me, SoCo is supposed to be a time of celebration, and I struggled with that. I think I was just really not prepared. And even though I was not going to murmur, and I don't really think I did, it was not a celebration. So I'd say for me first is next year. And I had the money set aside. I had 2 years worth of money set aside. So I had enough to do what I needed to do and to be able to buy those extra things. I think if I were going to say, I'd probably go buy me make a nice big pot of lasagna, or maybe go buy a steak, maybe buy a filet, something that you don't normally spend your money on. That maybe your budget doesn't allow, or maybe it's just that, I like those things, but that's not something that I would just buy on a regular basis. So, that's a really good point, is having things set aside, that having food set aside, and then maybe try to push out of my comfort zone a little bit more and go introduce myself to families, go introduce myself to people, and maybe actually set up my campsite where I could invite people over and say, hey, come join me. Especially maybe the other women that are singles. It did make it a little bit more difficult having a dog there, having to, wrangle them, and maybe need to leave them in the car or something like that while you go do things. But yeah, I'd say, buy some extra things or make some extra things that you would not normally do. That would be something you would celebrate with. So yeah.
Turkey and stuffing.
I like turkey and stuffing. I'm just going to have to do it at a different time.
Right? Yeah, I kind of took a hit early on in our marriage with my in-laws because I made enchilada casserole for for Thanksgiving.
Ooh, that would have been good.
But we're supposed to be making things we're thankful for.
And you're thankful for enchiladas.
It all got eaten, so apparently I wasn't the only person that thought that way.
Yeah. Somebody else told me.
I was stuffed. I don't know.
Oh, that sounds wonderful. My former, my dad's widow made white cheese enchilada casseroles.
Oh, uh-huh.
And oh my goodness, those things were fabulous, and they didn't last long.
Right. Excellent.
And somebody told me the other day that the tryptophan that you get, the sleepy thing that you get with the turkey, actually is not there with organic turkey. It's actually a byproduct of the chemicals.
Or something. Ew. Ew.
I know. It's like, oh, you just ruined my.
Okay. Is there anything else you want to tell everybody about SoCo?
Go do it. If you haven't, it's a tremendous, experience. It gets us away out of our comfort zones. And I think sometimes when we do that, the Father can actually teach us things. And we can hear him better because we're out. We're not. I mean, a lot of people still had electronics. I had Wi-Fi, but I didn't have my phone. So it really made me disconnect. It puts you around like-minded people and believers. And I think people that have a different personality would feel that quicker. Next year, I won't have the problem because I'll have known the majority of the people, if it's the same group of people, or it'll be a different experience. So I would say go get your tent or, whatever you're comfortable in, get your camping supplies and go do it. It's, you get to see some amazing things from our Father when you do that. So.
Excellent. All right. If you don't mind, I'll pray us out of this. And I thank you very much for taking the time to share with everybody what your first experience was.
Yeah, thanks for inviting me. It was fun.
It was fun. Okay. Thank you, Abba, for this wonderful testimony and guidance from Dee. And thank you for keeping everybody there safe at SoCo. It's a wonderful thing for us to be able to experience the fellowship and family like you want us to, and we thank you for that. We ask that you give us the strength and discernment and guidance to combat and pray against what's going to be happening today, tomorrow, and the next day, against the covens and against their spells and enchantments. To protect those around us immediately in each of our own communities, and to bind those spirits, and that we be a good example for you, that people would want to meet you personally and be your children also through your Son, Yeshua, Jesus. And we thank you for that. And we ask that you bless everybody here today and in the future. And thank you. In Jesus, Yeshua's name. Amen.
Yeah.
Okay, awesome. Thank you, Dee. Thank you, everybody, for joining us today. That was very wonderful. And we will see you for the reading on Sabbath, and we'll talk to you then. Bye.
Bye.
Bye. Bye.